Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Q&A episode. Adri, what do you have in store for me today?
Hey Paul, great to be back. Let's get started with questions. Our first question of the day is about serving your web story. And Alberto asks, should a web story be hosted on your domain or subdomain? Which one is better for SEO purposes?
You should use the domain that you already publish a lot of content on. So if you create a new subdomain for web stories, that might not do you a favor because it is seen by the search indexes as a new property. So really what you want to do is use the property that you already established, because that is the one that presumably has quality signals already for a longer time in the search index.
Great. And now our next question is from Terry. What metrics can we look at that will tell us if our stories are being read or where we lose readers? Where can we find metrics and data to help us build better stories without guessing?
Since web stories are really just a web page, under the hood, you can use Google Analytics and other analytics services. Now, with Google Analytics as an example, we have an example configuration for this in the AMP blog because it's using AMP technology under the hood. The good news is that for certain visual editors, like the Web Stories editor, it's already adding a default great configuration that will fire the right events to track things like story page progress and story completion, so that you can automatically see this in your analytics dashboard under events and look at how many people have completed a story, for instance, or how many people have dropped off at a certain page. You can hand code this from scratch. You can do it with other editors. There are a lot of different possibilities.
Great, thank you, Paul. Our next question is from Dr. Amrita, and here's what she is saying. How can I use high quality videos in web stories without weighing down the website?
So with videos, you still have to be a little bit more careful than with social stories. Because with social stories, you upload a video and then it gets recompressed on the platform. And this is not the case for web stories, right? Videos with web stories, you are hosting on your own server. That means that if a web story is consumed on your own server, then that video will be served as is, which means that you have to think about how to compress your videos beforehand and ideally get them into less than 5 megabyte range, ideally less than 2 or 3 megabyte at a time. So make sure that you don't just drag a 1 gigabyte video into your web story editor of choice. That will really just not be a great experience for your readers. That being said, there is a cache on top, which means that if you are consuming web stories on, let's say, Google Search or Discover, then we are trying to take your video and recompress it. But that doesn't always work, so it's best to also do it on your own.
Great, thank you, Paul. And now we have another question from Terry. Is there a roadmap for web stories for WordPress?
What a great setup. Not only is there a roadmap, there's a public roadmap. In fact, I added a link to the description in this video, so please check it out and let us know what you think. We are trying to be as transparent as possible. That includes not only the code, but also everything we're up to on the product management level.
That's great. I'm so excited about that. Our next question is from Murray. And he is saying, what about horizontal stories on mobile and desktop?
You can absolutely create horizontal stories if you're hand coding from scratch or if the visual editor supports it. In the underlying AMP story format, there's a landscape option, which allows you to tell the format, yes, I want to have a responsive story that stretches to horizontal formats. Now, designing such a story is a little bit more involved because you need to make sure that elements are placed in the right places for horizontal display. But you can do it if you want to. You can check out the documentation on AMP Dev if you code it from scratch, or you can ask your visual editor of choice to see if it supports it.
So our next question for today is from Andre. Can we use web stories to promote best flight deals? Is it possible to geo-target these stories to a particular city or country?
Sadly, the answer on this is no. I'm not familiar of any way to customize stories so they only show in a certain country. So best to focus on content that is eligible for everyone.
And our next question today is from Ashwin. What are the possibilities of AdSense and Google Ads in web stories? Is video ad placement available?
Such a great question because just a couple days ago, we've announced Google AdSense integration for web stories. So check out the blog post on this, also linked in the description, which will give you more information of how to include AdSense. As of this time, not every visual editor supports ads, so that means you might have to touch the code, but these editor integrations will come in the future.
And Paul, we're coming to an end. We have our last question. This is coming from Kim. If we have a blog post titled Chocolate Chip Cookies, and we create a web story titled Chocolate Chip Cookies, would having these same keywords affect our search ranking for the blog post, as well as similar content?
Excellent question. I think I might have said a bunch of things that might have confused people, like you should create original content for web stories if at all possible. But it doesn't mean that you cannot use the same topic on something. I just don't want you to take a blog post and take every paragraph as is and turn it into web story pages, because that would be a bad experience. The format is just not made for that. So that doesn't mean that you can't take the chocolate chip cookie blog post and adapt the topic as a web story. So it's completely legitimate to do this and have a chocolate chip cookie blog post and a chocolate chip cookie web story. And that will hopefully not get you a penalty. We think this is a very legitimate use case.
Great. Now I feel like a chocolate chip cookie. Thanks everyone for sending all these questions. I know we didn't get to answer all of them, but we promise we're working on them and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Sounds great, Adri. See you soon, everyone. Onwards.